first time in Lithuania, my second time in the Baltics. I've been to Tallinn before, been to Minsk, which is really close to Vilnius. And yeah, it's pretty here. It's a different light. It's beautiful when it's blue like today, even if it's cold, you get a very different light from Central Europe. It's beautiful. Lithuanian women, they rock, and people are really nice in general, and it's just beautiful here.
That's one of the best I ever did, representing here. You know what I mean?
I always wanted to become an astronaut. I was building my own spaceships with Lego and engines and headphones and yeah. And I think probably a recording studio, especially when you work with a lot of analog gear and you switch off the lights and you only have the blinking lights from the synthesizers, it's very much like a spaceship cockpit. I'm traveling, yeah. And, yeah. Not so deep music in general is kind of playing with triggers that everybody understands, you know, like certain cliches that you can fulfill and it would work on people. For a while it was like a snare roll. That's like obvious, yeah. In different forms, this was everywhere in techno, you know. No bass drum, you wait because it's gonna come back. So this is kind of formulated stuff, and I think this is where it becomes cheesy or commercial. If you spend too much time thinking about, oh, I will have this huge break and then everybody will go freak. And the really deep music, I always think people don't think about the audience, they don't think about how can I sell this, but they're in an emotional state and they express themselves, and it's usually music without big breaks, without big rocket taking off. It's something that just flows, you know, and works on the music, the nice chords, maybe a nice vocal, but not like trying for something that everybody will cheer to. If you talk about ambient or more experimental music, it's usually album music. And like when I still had my label with my partner Jonas Grossman, we were more focused.
Talking about
Source, yeah. We were more like focused on albums, not so much on singles. And so we put out a lot of ambient music, and I would still do that today. But the problem is, since music is sold via the internet, people buy single tracks. They don't care about albums. They don't really have time to listen to something for 60 minutes because they have to go on Twitter and download something else. And so I think it's just hard times for albums, and therefore it's hard times for ambient music, but I still do it. And techno and house, in my case more house, it's more like functional music. You put it on vinyl, you hope a DJ will play it, you hope it will be played at a club and people will have a good time. But in this kind of genre, people only look for a single track, not for an album. So that's why I think at the moment it's more logical for me, natural for me to do singles vinyl. Then CDs nobody wants, you know, like Fax used to sell 2,000 to 3,000 copies of each album when I started working with Pete, and now he's down to under 500. I think it's 300 at the moment, so that's that divided by 10. A lot of the ambient music I like a lot is based on rather noise than notes or score. And I remember, like, as a child, I was laying down on the floor in the apartment, and under the door I could hear how the air circulating in the house makes some kind of sound, like
So it was the music.
yeah, it was music for me, and I think there's a lot of music in that. Jazz is very important for me, and jazz is the teacher, as Juan Atkins and 3MB were saying back then in 1990. But on the other hand, jazz is also a music. Most people, when they talk about jazz, what they think about is like Miles Davis and Antibes in 1956, and not what's happening now. And the recent contemporary jazz, a lot of it tries to sound like old school bebop or cool, but they haven't really found the new jazz really. After free jazz, after the 70s, maybe some electronic jazz, Miles Davis, electric, but nowadays I think jazz is in a crisis, and I think probably Square Pusher or some other good electronic music has more to do with contemporary jazz than most of those guys trying to sound like Miles or John Coltrane. But I think most of all it's the improvising and the exploration bit. I think jazz was also about exploring the boundaries, and if you do the same old straight house music forever and ever, it's not really pushing things forward. But as soon as you break out of the normal styles, then it's pretty likely to be jazzy like. Even the records I play, in most cases I couldn't tell you who is it or what's the title, because I go to the record shop and I go through shelves and I pull stuff and I listen to it, and if I like it I buy it, and then I might know what label or something, but not exactly. Only if something turns out to be really important and I find out, man, this record you've been playing it for a year, so what is it now? Then I find out and I read, and sometimes I find out, it's this name, I've been reading it all the time. So I'm not really, you can ask me, I'm not a geek, I don't know much about. Because at home I listen to my same old kind of jazz, classical, Beatles, whatever, and most of all the stuff that I'm working on. So I hardly listen to electronic music at home because it distracts me more from my own shit. If I was listening to Atom Heart all day, I couldn't do anything because he's so good that it kind of floors you, you know, with all this stuff he's got going on. It's always the communication with another human being, and I think it's really essential for music because I think music is the oldest form of language in a way. Before we had language, I'm sure we were singing and drumming and going in the woods, going and trancing out together, and then we found a language. And when I work with other people, I can connect to this kind of early stage of communication between the other guy and me, and then later between the audience and us. And if I work on my own, it's more like writing a book or something. It's something very brain heavy, and I'm always confronted with my thoughts, with my ideas, with my aesthetics. If I work with someone else, I have to be open for something that I wouldn't do, a sound that I wouldn't use. But I am not saying to the other guy, oh, this sound really sucks, do something else, but I have to accept it. And then in the end, I might like the result a lot, you know, because I was doing something I wouldn't have done if I choose with my mind. Thank you, it was cool, and I'm looking forward to tonight and hopefully to come back here as well.
For Lithuanian audience.
What they should do? I don't know.
Dance.
Yeah, dance, so absolutely.
Thank you.